All right, so the next thing I want to talk about was reading and writing objects to a file. Now we could parse up an object and write lines like what we did for the first example where I had the student's name and I had their grades. So for this example, we're going to use what we call the serializable interface. So in chapter 7, we talked about different interfaces. So I went ahead and just brought over the class that I used in the first example, which is just simply a simple student class that has a name and 3 test scores. And then in my driver class, I don't really have much going on here. Okay, but essentially what I want to do is I'm going to have a student object and I want to load the student from a file. Okay, that's the first thing I'm going to do. Then I'm going to display student info. And I'm going to allow I'm going to allow the student class to be updated, like maybe change something about the student. So modify student object, then save changes, and then I can close, I can rerun the app, and then we can load the student again, and then we can see that the student is actually like retained like its information. Like is to say we change the test grade, it's going to have that test grade the next time we run the program. So we're actually saving the data to an actual file. So to do this, the first thing we need to do is we need our student class to implement the serializable interface. So in chapter 7, we talked about interfaces. One interface is the serializable interface, and this basically allows the object to be serialized and stored into a file. So we call it the serializable interface. Oh shoot, what the heck? I did not expect that to happen. My IntelliJ just crashed. Okay, so let me go ahead and reopen this. All right, so we have our serializable interface implemented. Okay, and that's basically going to allow, or basically tells Java that we can go ahead and serialize this data and store it into a file. The first thing we want to do is we want to load a student from the file and then put it into our student object. So I'm going to go ahead and make student, and we'll just say like this is a student that we want to modify. All right, so when we load, what we're going to do is we're going to use some classes called the FileInputStream. FileInputStream and the ObjectInputStream. Okay, and we're gonna need a file of where we're gonna actually store the data. So I'm gonna go ahead and we'll just say that we're going to have a file, and we'll call this file like student data file. Okay, it's a new file, and let's say student data.text. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and import this class. All right, so I should probably go to a separate method and do all this, but I'm gonna go ahead and just write all this inside of the main method for now, and then we can worry about kind of organizing our code so that it can look a little neater later. So what we're going to use is what we call the FileInputStream, and I'll just say FileInputStream is equal to new FileInputStream, and we're going to read the student data file. All right, so same thing is we're going to have to handle an exception, and the exception looks like it's the file not found. Okay, so I need to surround this with the try catch, and at this point, what I'm going to do is just say like system.out.println, let's say like could not load student data. All right, so if we cannot load the student data, then what we're going to do is we're just going to say student is equal to new student. And we'll just we'll make like dummy data right here. Okay, just, I'm just trying to like simulate a program. Like if you're not able to load the student data, you still kind of want to go on with the flow of the program so that you could come over here and display the student information that you actually loaded. So if you're not able to load any data, we still want to display something and then allow them to see the data, maybe modify the data and try to save changes. So come over here. I'm going to do the same thing I did the last time where I showed the student information like in a nice little box. We have the name. All right, and this is upsetting me. What is upset? Oh, it might not have been initialized. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just set this equal to null for now. Okay, and we'll come over here and do this for test 1, 2, 3, and then test average. So we'll say test 1, test 2, test 3. All right, and my test average, and these are actually floats, 10%F. Okay, and instead of get name, it is get test 1, get test 2, get test 3, and calculate test average. All right, pretty simple. I'm going to just run this to make sure this actually works as I expect it to. So I don't expect to find that file, so I expect it to actually throw this exception, and then I'm pretty much just displaying the grades, right? And I don't have anything else like modifying, but if I do, let's just say, okay, well, we'll just change the student test 1 grade to 94. Okay, and then I'll save the changes, and then next time I load this, we'll be able to see the student information. Okay, so back up here to the file input stream. So the file input stream, I read the file data in, but then I'm like the other file reader and buffered reader, like we're going to use a class that's actually created to make reading objects more efficient. So I'm going to use the ObjectInputStream. Okay, so we'll say ObjectInputStream is equal to new ObjectInputStream, and it's going to take in the file input stream. Okay, so this is upset. It wants me to handle an exception. So I'm going to come over here, highlight that, and add catch clause. Okay, so there's an input-output exception. I'm just going to leave it like that, let it print out the stack trace if I get an input-output exception. Okay, so here is my object for my input. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this object out of this file by saying ObjectInputStream dot, I believe the method is readObject. Yeah, readObject. Okay, so I have this generic object that I'm going to read, and I'm going to put it into an object reference variable called obj. And essentially what I want to do is I want to cast that to a student. Okay, so I'm going to say if the object is an instance of student, then and only then am I going to assign that object to my student object reference variable. Okay, and this is upset here. I probably need to handle an exception. So click this, wants me to handle another exception, and the exception is the class not found. Okay, so that just means that if I was trying to force it into a particular object, or I guess if it didn't find this particular class of this object that's stored in this file, then it's going to throw this exception. and I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just gonna go ahead and print the stack trace. Okay, so initially I do not expect to get error on my first pass, because if you look, I don't actually have that file saved anywhere. Okay, so I expect this to fail, and I expect it to come to the file not found, and I expect to write my student object like just default value. Then I come over here, print out my value, then I change the test score to something, and then I come over here and I try to save the changes. Okay, but this is the way I read an object from a file. Okay, so this is the way I read an object that's been serialized and placed into a file. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close those streams. Okay, and over here for my save changes, this is where I'm going to actually write to the file. Okay, so same thing. You have your file input stream, you're going to have your file output stream. Okay, it's going to be a new file output stream, and then you're going to pass in the file, which is the student data file. That's what you want to write to. This is upset. Obviously, you have to surround it with the try catch. So come over here and surround with the try catch. I'm going to go ahead and just leave the stack trace for now, but I'm going to go ahead and actually, no, I'm going to leave it just like that. And then I'm going to go to ObjectInputStream. And I'm going to pass in my file output stream. All right, perfect. It wants me to handle another exception. So highlight this and yeah, cancel the input output exception is what it wants me to handle. All right. And what I'm going to do is, this is pretty simple. You just take this object, output stream, and then you write your object. All right, so I'm going to write the object, and the object I want to write is my student. Now, if I did not implement the serializable interface, this would actually fail. Okay, and it would probably fail, and I'll probably get the input-output exception. So I'm going to write that, and then I'm going to go ahead and close the file output stream and the object output stream, close them both. All right, and that's pretty much it. I'm able to read and write to a file. Now, to prove that this is going to fail, if I don't have this interface implemented, I'm going to go ahead and just remove it. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run, and let's just see what happens. All right, so it couldn't load the student data, printed everything out, and then I got input, output, not serializable exception, student. Okay, so it's telling me that I don't have that interface there on the student, so it can't actually serialize that object and write it to a file. That's why it's important to come over here and put implements and then the serializable interface. So now when I come over here and run this program, it's still upsetting me. What the heck? Write aborted. Oh, because I didn't see this, but we actually created this file and now it's trying to read it, and it's okay. So let me just go ahead and delete this. All right, I'll delete this file. Let me run this one more time. And write aborted Java.io student object read object. Why does it keep trying to read the object? It keeps failing here, and I know it's gonna fail because I don't have the data saved there just yet. So I need a way to prevent this from happening. All right, so come over here. I do implement serializable, and I want to stop this from happening. Okay, so the exception being thrown is not serializable exception. I thought if I deleted this, it would fix the problem. Oh, it didn't delete it before because I was doing like I'm doing a safe delete. Okay, So I'm going to go ahead and delete. Okay, there you go. Problem's fixed. Sorry about that. Okay, so what was happening was the first time I ran it, when I was trying to demonstrate that you can, like, it's going to throw an exception if you don't have the serializable interface. That file was created anyway, and then the next time I ran it, it kept see all the file there, and it kept trying to read the information from it. So you kind of have to be careful with this, and it's kind of set up like all the different types of failures that you're going to need to handle in such a case. So I went ahead and just deleted it, and now I assume that it's going to actually run correctly this time. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. Okay, it looks happy. Nothing crashed, right? Couldn't find the student data to load, right? And then that's what it did. Printed all zeros, and then it wrote data to this file. Now, if you look at this data, it doesn't make sense, right? This is all just kind of like serialized information that Java is gonna read. So now when I run this again, it was able to read data this time. You see, because now I have a 94. So I can come over here and I can maybe make a menu like, oh, do you want to change the student's name? Do you want to update the student's test score? But if I come over here and just say, like, you know what, let's go ahead and, you know, manually just set this instead of having an interface with the user, I can go ahead and set the name to Frank, and maybe change, you know, another test score like test 2 to an 87. Okay, run this, and I loaded this information. Okay, but then I changed it after I loaded it, so the next time I run it, I should see the name and test 2 updated. So I'm gonna run it again, and now you can see that the name is updated and test 2 is updated. So I'm actually writing the entire object to a file and then parsing it and reading it out, reading it back out again. Now there is something else that you can kind of put in, like a serializable UID to act as like a version control. I forgot the name of it. Let's see. So UID. You know what? I'm just going to Google it. I'm sorry. Let me just Google this really quick so you can't see my other screen, but serializable UID Java. Okay, so what you want to do is have what they call a serializable UID inside of your class, and it kind of acts as a version control. Okay, and by version control, let's just say, like, I added this now, so now anything I serializable will not be able to be read anymore. I just put a 0. I made this like version 0 pretty much, and now when I run this, it should crash. Okay, so it's saying like it cannot, you know, it's like not able to parse that object because of the UID. I'm going to come over here to my test, and I should have done this before when I was stuck, is I can just put in like a generic exception so that we can continue and not crash the program. And we'll just say system out print line, and then we'll just say like get message. We'll basically just output the message, but we should be able to continue. All right, so, and I'm not able to continue. What the heck? Hold on, let me think about this. So line 12, read object, it's thrown an exception. I should have caught it here. I don't know why I didn't catch. Oh, no pointer exception. Okay, but I think I know what's going on. I am passing it, but then I have a no pointer exception because I'm not like initializing this object anywhere. So if we make it to this, we're going to initialize this object so we don't throw a no pointer exception right here. All right, so run this one more time. And no pointer exception. All right, so it's being handled somewhere else. I have no idea where. There. All right, I went ahead and just, in all my catches, initialize that object. All right, there you go. So I made it past this error and I output my generic information. Now that I serialize the object with the new UID, when I run this, it's going to be okay. Okay, so it's kind of like a version control. You change that number and then like the object can no longer be serialized. But now when I run this, that information is okay. If I were to come over here and bump up this number to like a 1, and now I come back over here and try to rerun, I'm going to run into the same problem where it can't actually deserialize that object and use it inside of this program. But since I saved it again after I changed the UID, then the next time I run it, everything will be okay. Okay, so it's kind of like having a version control. So this is the serializable interface. This is something that I'm going to test you on, and the serializable UID. You need to know what both of these things are and what they do, and the benefit of using them. So it basically just makes, you can apply the serializable interface to make a class serializable, meaning it can be saved to a file and deserialized from the file, so that we can store it after the program like stops and then reread that information.